Welcome to today's audiobook reading of Before the Stars Burn Out, a deeply moving romance about love, time, wonder, illness, and the moments that make life unforgettable. Adrian Brooks has spent his life studying the sky. As the director of Whitfield Observatory, he believes the universe can be understood through light, numbers, patterns, and facts. Then he meets Maya Collins. Maya is a documentary filmmaker who chases the sky across the world. Meteor showers, auroras, deserts, cliffs, lavender fields, and every beautiful place where people look up and remember they are not alone. She is bold, curious, restless, and impossible to ignore. What begins as a chance meeting beneath a meteor shower slowly becomes letters across the dark, shared skies, honest confessions, and a love neither of them planned for. But when Maya receives a rare and life-changing diagnosis, both of them must face a painful truth. Love is not measured by how much time we are given. It is measured by how fully we live the moments that take our breath away. Together, they create a list called Before the Stars Burn Out, a promise to chase every sky, every dream, and every beautiful second they can still hold. So, settle in, relax, and let this story carry you beneath desert stars, dancing auroras, lavender sunsets, ocean cliffs, and a love bright enough to keep shining, even when time begins to fade. This is Before the Stars Burn Out. Chapter 1. The Man Who Measured Everything. 26 years later, Adrian Brooks stood in the control room of the Whitfield Observatory, high on a ridge above the California desert, and told a room full of donors that the universe was, at its core, knowable. "Every star you see tonight," he said, "has a story we can read. Its age, its composition, the moment it will die, all of it is written in light, if you know how to look." He clicked to the next slide, a spiral galaxy caught mid-glow, and heard the small appreciative murmur that always followed. "That's the gift of this work. Nothing is really a mystery. It's only a question we haven't asked correctly yet." It was a good line. He'd used it in a dozen fundraising talks, and it always landed, because it was the kind of thing people wanted to believe about the world, that with enough patience and the right instruments, chaos could be organized into sense. Adrian believed it more than most. He had built his life around it. At 34, he was the youngest observatory director in Whitfield's history, a position that had cost him, by his own private accounting, most of his 20s and both of his serious relationships. His ex-fiancée, Claire, had once told him, not unkindly, near the end, that he loved the sky because it never asked him to be anywhere at an inconvenient hour, never needed him to explain himself, never left. He had not been able to argue with her, which had told him everything he needed to know about why she was leaving. That had been 3 years ago. Since then, his life had settled into a shape he found, if not joyful, at least reliable. He woke at 5, he ran 4 miles along the ridge trail before the heat made it unbearable. He answered emails in the order they arrived. He gave his lectures, reviewed his graduate students' data, ate dinner alone at the small kitchen table in the director's cottage behind the dome, and fell asleep most nights with a journal article open on his chest. Tonight was the Whitfield Observatory's Perseid Meteor Shower Festival, one of the few events on his calendar that made his mentor, Dr. Eleanor Voss, insist he actually leave his office and speak to human beings. "You're doing the thing again," Eleanor said, appearing at his elbow as the donor crowd dispersed toward the refreshment tent. She was 71, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and had run the observatory for 30 years before handing it to Adrian with what he still suspected was more faith than the data supported. "The thing where you explain wonder instead of letting people feel it. I explained the physics correctly." "You always do." She patted his arm, the gesture somewhere between affection and reprimand. "That's the problem, dear boy. Go outside, look at the actual sky instead of a slide of it, and try, for one night, not to correct anyone who makes a wish." He didn't intend to take her seriously. But an hour later, with the festival grounds filling with families on blankets, and the first meteors beginning to streak in ones and twos across a sky just now going fully dark, Adrian found himself walking the perimeter of the lawn alone, hands in his pockets, doing the thing he always did at these events, checking that the telescopes were angled correctly, that the volunteer guides knew their constellations, that nothing was, in any sense, out of place. He was 70 feet from the observatory's east lawn when he heard the laugh. It was not a delicate laugh. It came from somewhere below the ribs, unguarded, a little too loud for the hushed reverence most people brought to a night like this, and it made 3 separate families turn their heads. Adrian turned his too. A woman was lying flat on her back in the grass at the edge of the lawn, well outside the roped-off viewing area, a camera resting on her stomach, and her dark hair fanned out around her head, like she'd fallen from a great height and simply decided to stay there. She had one arm flung up, pointing at the sky, laughing at something Adrian couldn't see, until he followed her arm and caught, just at its tail end, the brightest meteor of the night so far, a long green-white blaze that seemed to hang in the air a full second longer than physics should have allowed. "Did you?" "That," she said, to no one, to everyone, to the sky itself. "Tell me somebody else saw that." "I saw it," Adrian said, before he had decided to speak at all. She turned her head, unbothered, unhurried, and looked at him upside down from the grass with an expression that was already, somehow, amused. "You're the guy from the brochure," she said. "The director, Dr. Brooks. You're on the wrong side of the rope," he said. "I know." She didn't move. "The view's better from real grass than from a folding chair. Rope doesn't change the sky, Dr. Brooks. It just changes where they let you stand to look at it." He should have told her to move. Instead, he found himself crouching down at the edge of the roped lawn, close enough to see that her eyes, even in starlight, were an unusual pale brown, gold at the center like something lit from within. "You're not on the guest list," he said. It came out more like a question than an accusation. "I'm not anyone's guest. I let myself in around the side by the water tower." She said this with no apparent guilt whatsoever. "I'm making a film about people who chase the sky. Meteor showers, eclipses, the aurora, all of it. I heard this was one of the best dark sky sights left in the state, so," she shrugged, a small economical movement, still flat on her back. "Here I am. You could have bought a ticket." "I could have," she agreed cheerfully, "but then I'd have missed the fun part." Above them, another meteor streaked and died, and this time, she didn't look away from him to watch it. She watched his face instead, to see if he would. He didn't. "I'm Maya," she said, finally sitting up, extending a hand, caked faintly with dirt and dry grass. "Collins. And before you ask, yes, I know I'm trespassing. No, I'm not sorry. And yes, I would very much like to know your name, since apparently you're important enough to have a brochure." Adrian looked at her hand for a moment too long. Then he took it. "Adrian," he said. "Just Adrian is fine." "Just Adrian," she repeated, testing the words like she was deciding whether she believed them. "Nice to meet you, just Adrian. You have excellent stars tonight." He would think, much later, replaying this exact moment more times than he would ever admit to anyone, that this was the point at which his carefully measured life began, without his permission, to come slightly undone, the moment a woman who did not believe in ropes looked up at him from the grass and made the whole enormous catalogued sky feel, for the first time in years, like something he hadn't fully explained after all. Chapter Tie, The Woman Who Chased Light. Maya Collins had a rule, one she'd carried with her through 11 countries and 4 continents, and more overnight bus rides than she could accurately count. Never plan past what you can carry. It had served her well. At 31, she had built a career, if career was even the word for something so unglamorous and stubbornly self-funded, out of finding the stories other documentary crews walked past. Not the eclipse itself, but the retired fishermen in the Faroe Islands, who had watched 40 of them and still cried every time. Not the aurora, but the Sami grandmother who taught her grandchildren that the lights were the souls of the dead, dancing, and that you should never whistle at them or they'd come down and carry you away. Her current project, 3 years and 1 modest festival award into its life, was called Sky Watchers, a feature documentary about ordinary people all over the world who organized their lives around the night sky. She had exactly enough funding left to finish 2 more locations, and exactly no permanent address, having given up her Los Angeles apartment 2 years earlier, when she realized she was paying rent on a place she visited 11 weeks a year. Her younger brother, Danny, called this running. Maya called it living exactly the way she wanted to, and had stopped trying to explain the difference to people who measured a good life by how long they could stay still in one place. She'd heard about Whitfield Observatory from a park ranger in Joshua Tree, who swore it had the darkest skies left in Southern California, and she'd driven up that afternoon with a rental car, one camera, and no ticket, because Maya Collins had never in her adult life paid to look at something that belonged, by any reasonable definition, to everyone. She had not expected the observatory's director to be quite so easy to fluster. He'd looked, crouched there at the edge of the rope in his neatly pressed shirt with the Whitfield logo stitched over the pocket, like a man who had memorized the instructions for every possible situation, except the one currently happening to him. She liked that. She liked, even more, that he hadn't ordered her off the grass, hadn't recited a rule at her, had simply knelt down into the dirt across from her like the conversation itself was worth more than being right. "So," she said, twisting to sit fully upright, brushing grass from her elbows, "tell me something true about the sky that isn't in the brochure." Adrian considered this with the seriousness of a man being asked to defend a thesis. "The light from that meteor," he said finally, nodding toward the sky, "left its source before either of us was born. Most of what people wish on tonight is already gone. The rock burned up in the atmosphere in under a second. You're not wishing on the star, you're wishing on the memory of one." Maya turned this over, delighted. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, and also possibly the most romantic. It's not meant to be romantic, it's a physical description of combustion. Everything's romantic if you say it slow enough, just Adrian." She grinned at his visible discomfort. "You should try it, say it slow." He didn't, but she noticed, because noticing things was, in the end, her entire profession, that the corner of his mouth had moved, very slightly, in a way she suspected did not happen often. They talked for 40 minutes on that lawn, while meteors fell around them in twos and threes, about nothing that mattered and everything that did. Her favorite skies, Atacama, hands down, because the desert air held so little moisture that the stars looked close enough to touch. His least favorite question at donor dinners: "People always ask if we've found aliens, and I always have to disappoint them." The fact that she had once talked her way onto a fishing boat in Norway with nothing but a smile and a promise to help gut the catch, a promise she had, to her own surprise, kept. "You just talk your way into things," Adrian said. It wasn't quite a compliment, and wasn't quite a criticism. "I ask nicely, and I mean it when people say no," Maya said. "That's the whole trick. Most people expect you to argue with them. When you don't, they get curious. And if they still say no, then I find a different door." She shrugged. "There's always a different door, Adrian. People just stop looking for it too soon." He was quiet at that, and she watched him look up at the sky, instead of at her, his jaw working slightly like he was chewing on something he didn't have words for yet. And Maya, who had interviewed grieving widowers and terrified new mothers and men who had crossed oceans on rafts, who prided herself on reading a person's whole history in the way they held their shoulders, thought, "There's a door in this one somewhere, and it hasn't been opened in a very long time." She did not say this out loud. She had learned, the hard way, more than once, that some doors needed to be found by the person standing behind them. Instead she said, "I'm filming here for the next 3 days. Would the director of Whitfield Observatory be willing to answer some very unprofessional questions on camera, off the record, about why grown men build their entire lives around something they can't touch?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Somewhere behind them, the festival crowd was beginning to applaud the peak of the shower, dozens of meteors now streaking the sky in overlapping arcs of light. "On one condition," he said. "Name it. You use the ticket booth next time." Maya laughed. That same unguarded, too loud laugh that had made him turn around in the first place, and stuck out her dirt-smudged hand a second time. "Deal, Dr. Brooks," she said, "but only because I like you." Neither of them noticed, in that moment, how much they'd already given away. Chapter 3. 3 Days of Ordinary Magic. She came back the next morning with her camera, a granola bar she offered to split with him, and absolutely no interest in the official tour. "Show me the room nobody puts in the brochure," she said, standing in the observatory's main hallway in worn hiking boots and a canvas jacket 2 sizes too big. And Adrian, against every instinct honed by a decade of donor relations, took her down to the old archive room in the basement, where the original 1962 star charts were kept, hand-inked by astronomers who had never touched a computer, their careful constellations fading now to the color of weak tea. Maya spent 40 minutes on her knees photographing a single chart of Orion, murmuring to herself the whole time, and Adrian found himself, for once, with nothing useful to add. He simply watched her work, and was surprised to discover he didn't mind the silence at all. "Why documentaries?" he asked eventually, when she finally sat back on her heels. "Because everyone has a sky story," she said, "and almost nobody ever gets asked to tell it." She looked up at him. "You have one too." "I can tell. I run an observatory. My entire life is a sky story." "That's not what I mean." She stood, brushing dust from her knees, and studied him with the same unhurried attention she'd given the star chart. "I mean the one that made you choose this. The first one. There's always a first one." He thought of the truck bed outside Flagstaff, the warm hood beneath his back, his father's voice in the dark. He had not told that story to anyone in over a decade. Not to Claire, not to Eleanor, not even, really, to himself, in any form more complete than a fact filed away and left unexamined. "Maybe someday," he said, which was, for Adrian Brooks, the equivalent of shouting it from the observatory dome. Maya, to her credit, did not push. She simply smiled, like she'd won something small and important, and said, "I'll hold you to that, just Adrian." Over the next 2 days, without either of them quite deciding to make it a habit, she kept coming back. She filmed the graduate students calibrating the main telescope and made them laugh so hard one of them nearly dropped a mirror worth more than his annual stipend. She talked Eleanor Voss into 45 minutes of on-camera reminiscence about the early days of the observatory, footage so good Maya admitted, off the record, that it might end up being the emotional spine of her entire film. She ate lunch 3 days running at the small picnic table behind the dome, and on the third day, without asking, brought 2 sandwiches instead of 1. "I don't actually know if you like turkey," she said, setting one in front of him. "But you seemed like a turkey person." "I am in fact, a turkey person. See, I'm very good at my job." It was, Adrian would think later, an unremarkable exchange by any objective measure. And yet he found himself replaying it that night, the particular way she'd said, "turkey person." Like it was a diagnosis she was proud of getting right, and he understood, with the same quiet, irrefutable certainty he brought to a well-supported hypothesis, that something in his carefully ordered life had shifted, and was not going to shift back. On her last scheduled night at Whitfield, she found him alone on the observation deck, after the last tour group had gone, checking the following night's forecast out of habit rather than necessity. "I have to leave for the desert tomorrow," she said, climbing the metal stairs to join him. "Atacama. There's a group of amateur astronomers who've been meeting on the same ridge every clear night for 30 years. I've been trying to get access for months." "That sounds like a good story." "It is." She leaned on the railing beside him, close enough that he could smell the dust and sun on her jacket. "I keep thinking about what you said, about the light already being gone by the time we see it." She looked at him sideways. "Do you ever worry that you spend so much time studying things that are already over, you forget to notice the things that are actually still happening?" Adrian didn't have an answer for that. It was, he realized, the first question in longer than he could remember that his training had not prepared him to answer. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe. I don't have that problem," Maya said. "I have the opposite one. I'm so busy noticing things that are still happening, I never stop long enough to let anything catch up to me." She said it lightly, but there was something underneath it, some old and private weight, that made Adrian turn to look at her properly. "Is that a bad thing? I used to think it was the smartest way to live." She watched a satellite crawl silently across the sky above them, unhurried, patient, indifferent to either of their questions. "Lately, I'm not so sure." Before he could ask what she meant, she straightened, and the moment, whatever it had been building toward, folded itself neatly away, behind her easy smile. "Anyway," she said, "I should let you get back to your telescopes." She hesitated at the top of the stairs. "Would it be completely unprofessional if I emailed you?" "Not for the documentary. Just, to tell you what the Atacama sky looks like, since you'll never believe me otherwise." "I would like that," Adrian said, and meant it more than he'd meant almost anything in years. She left the next morning before he woke. He found, 3 days later, an email waiting in his inbox with the subject line, "Proof of life and very good stars," and 41 photographs attached, and he opened every single one before he'd finished his coffee. Chapter 4: Letters Across the Dark. What followed was 6 months of a correspondence Adrian could not, if pressed, have adequately explained to anyone who asked. Maija wrote from the Atacama Desert, where the amateur astronomers turned out to have a betting pool on whose homemade telescope would spot the next nova. She wrote from a fishing village in Norway, where she'd gone back to keep a promise to a woman who'd taught her the names the Sami gave each visible planet. She wrote from a stargazing festival in rural Australia, from a cabin in Finland, where she'd waited 9 straight cloudy nights for 1 clear hour of aurora, from a rooftop in Marrakesh, where she'd fallen asleep filming and woken with sunburn and 40 new minutes of unusable, but, in her words, extremely beautiful footage. Adrian wrote back from the observatory, where nothing much changed at all. New graduate students, a broken mirror mount, a donor dinner where he successfully avoided the alien question for the first time in memory, and found, to his own quiet astonishment, that he had begun looking forward to his inbox with something close to hunger. "You'd hate the bus I'm on right now," she wrote from somewhere in Patagonia. "It has no schedule. It leaves when the driver feels like it's time to leave. I love it. You would set your watch by the sun and lose your mind." "I would," he wrote back. "I checked, out of curiosity, and the departure times for South American regional buses are apparently considered a living document. I found this deeply upsetting on your behalf. See, this is why I like you, just Adrian. You take my chaos seriously enough to research it." He did not tell her, not yet, that he had, in fact, spent an entire Saturday reading about bus schedules in Patagonia, purely because she had mentioned them, or that he had started keeping a small paper star chart on his desk, marking the phases of the moon in different countries, so he'd know, roughly, what sky she was standing under on any given night. It felt, even to him, like an embarrassingly large gesture, built from an embarrassingly small amount of information. He kept doing it anyway. Eleanor noticed, before he was willing to admit anything to himself. "You've been smiling at your phone," she said one afternoon, appearing in his office doorway, with the particular expression she reserved for observations she found extremely satisfying. "I have not." "You have. It's a specific smile. I haven't seen it on you since before Claire. It's an email correspondence about a documentary, Eleanor." Eleanor settled into the chair across from his desk, entirely uninvited, the way she did whenever she intended to stay a while. "Adrian, I have known you since you were 24 years old and terrified of your own potential. I watched you build this observatory into something extraordinary, and I watched you build a wall around yourself just as carefully. I am not asking you to tear the wall down. I am simply telling you, as someone who loves you, that I have never once seen you check your phone during a board meeting, until 6 weeks ago." She stood, patting the desk once on her way out, the same gesture she'd used on his arm the night of the festival. "Whoever she is, don't let the data talk you out of it." Adrian did not respond to this, but that evening, when Maya's email arrived, 3 photographs of a lavender field in Provence, purple stretching to the horizon under a sky just beginning to fill with stars, captioned only, "Thinking about you tonight. Just Adrian, I don't entirely know why." He read it 4 times before he let himself reply, and when he finally did, he wrote something he had not written to anyone in 3 years. "I don't entirely know why either," he typed. "But I think I'd like to find out. I'll be at the AAS conference in San Francisco next month. It's 4 hours from wherever your film schedule has you. Come find me. I'll leave the rope down." He sent it before he could talk himself out of it, and then sat very still at his kitchen table, listening to the low hum of the desert night outside his window, feeling, for the first time in longer than he could name, like a man standing at the edge of something he had absolutely no data on, and wanting, quite badly, to jump anyway. Her reply came 4 minutes later. "I'll bring the sandwiches. You're still a turkey person, right?" He laughed out loud, alone in his kitchen, and the sound surprised him more than anything in the email had. Chapter 5, San Francisco. She was late, which did not surprise him, and she arrived windblown and grinning outside the conference hotel with a paper bag of sandwiches held up like a trophy, which did not surprise him either. What surprised him was the way his chest did something entirely unscientific the moment he saw her across the lobby. A lurch, a lightness, a feeling he could have described in 100 careful clinical terms, and none of them would have been honest. "You cut your hair," he said, which was not what he'd meant to say. "I did." She touched it self-consciously, shorter now, just past her jaw. "A woman in Marrakech convinced me it was time." "Is it terrible?" "No," he said. "It's not terrible." It was, in fact, the understatement of his adult life. They spent 2 days doing nothing that belonged in any conference program. He skipped a keynote to walk with her along the Embarcadero while she filmed strangers feeding pigeons and asked them, with her particular gift for making people forget they were being interviewed, what they wished for on the rare nights they remembered to look up. He took her to the small planetarium show he'd loved since graduate school and watched her face instead of the ceiling the entire time, and did not feel even slightly guilty about it. She took him to a night market in Chinatown and taught him to eat something with his hands he could not identify and would have refused to try from anyone else, and he found, to his own bewilderment, that he trusted her completely. On the second night, they sat on the roof of her hotel. She had, predictably, talked the front desk into letting them up despite a clearly posted sign forbidding exactly that, and watched the fog roll in off the bay, swallowing the lights of the bridge one section at a time. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" Adrian said. It came out before he'd fully decided to say it, which had become, he was noticing, an increasingly common experience around her, always. He told her about the truck bed outside Flagstaff, about his father's low voice in the dark, about the meteor that wasn't really a star at all, about the wish he'd made and forgotten by morning. He told her, for the first time in 26 years, that his mother had died when he was 3, and that his father had raised him alone, on a diet of night skies and hard facts, because facts, unlike people, could be relied upon to stay exactly where you'd left them. He told her his father had died the summer before graduate school, quietly, in his sleep, the same year Adrian had first pointed a research-grade telescope at the sky, and understood, with a grief he still hadn't fully processed, that he was now doing alone the thing they had once done together. Maya listened without interrupting, which he would later understand was its own kind of gift, and when he finished, she didn't offer him sympathy, exactly. She reached over, and took his hand, and held it, and said, "That's why you became an astrophysicist. Not because the universe made sense, because it was the last place you ever felt truly close to him." Adrian looked at her, this woman he'd known for 6 months and 2 weekends, and a folder of 41 photographs, and felt something in his chest crack open, in a way that should have frightened him, and instead felt, for reasons he could not fully explain, like relief. "I've never said any of that out loud before," he said. "I know," she said gently. "That's why I'm not letting go of your hand." They stayed on the roof until the fog swallowed the last visible star, and when he kissed her, finally, after 6 months of letters and 2 days of pretending the conference schedule mattered at all, it felt less like the beginning of something new, and more like the answer to a question he had been asking, without knowing it, since he was 8 years old in a truck bed outside Flagstaff, wishing on something that was already gone. Chapter 6, The First Symptom. It began, as these things so often do, as something small enough to ignore. 3 weeks after San Francisco, Maya called him from a farmhouse in the south of France, where she was filming an elderly couple who had watched every meteor shower together for 51 years from the same hill behind their vineyard, and her voice had a strange, careful flatness he hadn't heard from her before. "I dropped my camera today," she said. "In the middle of filming, it just fell out of my hand, like my fingers forgot what they were doing. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, probably just tired." I've been running on no sleep for a week. She laughed it off, and he let her, because there was no reason yet not to. But it happened again 10 days later. A fork at dinner, she told him, laughing, calling herself clumsy. And again the following week, when she described, almost as an afterthought at the end of a much longer email, about a stargazing festival in the Australian outback, a strange blurring in the corner of her left eye that had lasted almost an hour before clearing. Adrian, who had spent his entire professional life trained to notice patterns other people dismissed as coincidence, noticed. "Maya," he said, over a video call 2 days later, her face lit blue-white by her laptop screen in a hostel somewhere outside Alice Springs. "I think you should see a doctor. It's probably nothing, dehydration, jet lag, too much coffee. It's 3 separate incidents in 3 weeks involving 3 different parts of your body." He kept his voice level, careful, the tone he used when he needed a room full of donors to understand something difficult without panicking. "I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm asking you, as someone who loves data and also happens to love you, to please get it checked." There was a long silence on the line, longer than the satellite delay accounted for. "You love me," Maya said finally, very quietly. Adrian realized, with a lurch, that he had said it for the first time in the middle of an entirely different sentence, buried in a request about neurological symptoms, and that there was now no way to take it back, and no part of him that wanted to. "I do," he said. "I have for a while." I was apparently waiting for an inconvenient moment to say it properly. "That is," Maya said, her voice thick, "the least romantic and most extremely you way I have ever heard anyone say those words. I love you too, Adrian. I have for a while too." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, laughing despite herself. "Okay, fine. I'll see a doctor when I get back to the States. 2 weeks, I promise." She kept her promise. It took considerably longer than either of them expected to get an answer, and the answer, when it finally came, was not the one either of them had let themselves imagine. Chapter 11. The weight of a diagnosis. Adrian flew to Los Angeles the day Maya called him from the neurologist's parking lot, her voice small in a way he had never once heard it, not across 6 months of letters, not across every ordinary and extraordinary conversation they'd had since a lawn full of falling stars. "They found something," she said, "on the MRI." As she stopped, started again. "They want to run more tests." But the doctor used the word progressive, Adrian, and I didn't know what to do with my face when he said it. So I just nodded like I understood, and then I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could remember how to start the engine. He was on a plane within the hour. The full diagnosis arrived 9 days later, in a small beige office with a box of tissues positioned with obvious, practiced intention on the corner of the desk. The disease had a long clinical name. Adrian would spend that night, and every night after researching, until his eyes burned. A rare, progressive neurodegenerative condition, the kind medical journals discussed in careful, hedging language, the kind with no cure and only a loose, unreliable range of prognosis. 2 years, perhaps 4, perhaps, with luck no one could promise, longer. The tremors, the vision episodes, the fatigue she'd been dismissing as jet lag, all of it fit, retroactively, into a pattern Adrian's trained mind assembled with a speed and a horror he would never be able to fully explain to anyone who hadn't sat in that chair. Maya sat very still through the entire appointment, her hands folded in her lap, and asked, when the doctor finished, only one question: "Can I still travel?" The doctor, to his credit, did not immediately say no. "For now, we'll want to monitor things closely. But yes, for now, within reason, you can still live your life." "Good," Maya said, and stood, and thanked him, and did not cry until they were alone in the parking garage, where she finally let Adrian fold her into his arms and simply hold her, wordless, while she shook. The days that followed were the hardest of either of their lives. Maya cycled through fury and disbelief, and a grief so total it frightened him. Grief not only for the years she might lose, but for the specific, ordinary future she'd never quite let herself imagine, until it was suddenly, unbearably at risk. Growing old somewhere, finishing her film, meeting Adrian's future students, learning to stay in one place for longer than a season, because she'd finally found a person worth staying near. Adrian, for his part, retreated into the only language he trusted: research, statistics, specialists, a folder on his laptop that grew, within a week, to 43 tabs of medical literature he read late into the night, while Maya slept fitfully beside him, in the small apartment she'd finally, 3 months earlier, half-jokingly called, basically mine now. It was Maya who found him at 3 in the morning 11 days after the diagnosis, hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table, dark circles under his eyes, a spreadsheet of clinical trial eligibility criteria, open in front of him. Adrian. She said his name softly, and when he didn't look up, she crossed the room and closed the laptop, gently, under his hands. You have to stop. I'm trying to find something, anything. There has to be a trial, a treatment, something the data hasn't. I know. She knelt in front of his chair so their eyes were level, and took both of his hands in hers, stilling them. I know you're trying to fix it. That's what you do. You explain things until they make sense. But this doesn't make sense, and it's not going to, no matter how many tabs you open. Her voice broke, just slightly, before she steadied it. I've spent 11 days grieving a future I don't actually know I'm going to lose. And I watched you disappear into spreadsheets, instead of grieving with me, because you're scared, and I understand that. I am too. But Adrian, I don't want to spend however much time I have left watching you try to calculate your way out of losing me. I want to spend it living. He looked at her eyes red-rimmed but steady, her hands warm and certain around his, and felt something in him finally, quietly, give way. I don't know how to do that, he admitted. I don't know how to just let something happen without trying to control it. I know, Maya said. That's why I'm going to teach you. She managed a small, watery smile, the first real one he'd seen from her in over a week. I've been thinking. Instead of counting how many days I might have left, which none of us actually know, doctors included, not really. What if we stopped counting altogether? What if we made a list instead? Not of fears, of everything. Every sky we've ever wanted to see together. Every ordinary, extraordinary thing. And we just go. We fill whatever time we get so full, it doesn't matter how long it turns out to be. A list, Adrian repeated. A promise. She reached for a napkin on the table, and, before he could stop her, uncapped his research pen, and wrote, in her looping, unhurried hand, 6 words across the top. Before the stars burn out. She slid it across to him. I don't want to spend my remaining time being afraid of running out of it, she said. I want to spend it the way I've spent every other year of my life, wide awake, looking up. She looked at him, and there was fear in her eyes. Real fear, but underneath it, something steadier, something that looked almost like hope. Will you come with me, Adrian? Not to fix this, just to live it, all the way to the end, whenever that ends up being. Adrian looked down at the napkin, at her handwriting, at the 6 words that would come, in time, to define the rest of both their lives, and understood, with the same total, irrefutable certainty he had once reserved only for verified data, that there was no version of his future he wanted that did not have her in it, however long or short that future turned out to be. Yes, he said, anywhere, every sky you want to see, I'll be standing under it next to you. Maya smiled, and it was the first time since the diagnosis that the smile reached all the way to her eyes. Then let's go make a list, she said, before we run out of stars. Chapter 8, Atacama. They wrote the list together over the following week, sprawled across Maya's apartment floor, with takeout containers and a legal pad, laughing more than either of them expected to, given the circumstances. It grew to 22 items by the end of the night, some enormous, some absurdly small, and at the top, in Maya's handwriting, remained the 6 words from the napkin, now transferred formally to the pad's front page like a title deed. Item 1. She'd written, Atacama, the darkest sky in the world. You said it was your favorite fact. I want it to be our favorite memory. They flew to Chile 3 weeks later, once Adrian had arranged an unprecedented leave of absence. Eleanor had all but pushed him out the door, informing him with the particular bluntness of someone who had buried a husband too young herself, that the observatory would survive without him far better than certain other things would survive without his presence. And Maya had wrapped up what she called, with forced brightness, the footage I actually need for the film. Desert met them first with heat and silence. Then, as the sun dropped, with a cold that seemed to arrive from the ground itself. They stayed at a small research lodge, 2 hours from the nearest town, run by the same group of amateur astronomers Maya had filmed months earlier. Men and women in their 60s and 70s, who had been meeting on the same ridge for 3 decades and greeted Maya like a returning daughter. "You brought him," said Rosa, the lodge's unofficial matriarch, eyeing Adrian with open approval as she pressed a mug of something warm and unidentifiable into his hands. "Good. She talked about you the whole time she was here last time. We started a betting pool." "You did not," Maya said, delighted. "We did. I won." Rosa patted Adrian's cheek like he was a prize livestock entry and walked away cackling. That first night, the sky opened above them in a way Adrian, for all his professional experience with dark sky sights, had never quite witnessed with his own unaided eyes. The Milky Way arced overhead, not as a faint smudge, but as a solid river of light, dense enough to cast a soft glow on the sand, so many stars visible at once that the named constellations dissolved into something closer to a single, breathing structure. Maya lay back against him, his arms around her, both of them wrapped in the same blanket against the desert chill, and was, for a long while, entirely silent, a rarity he'd learned to recognize as its own kind of communication. "I keep trying to memorize it," she said finally. "Not just look at it, memorize it, like if I look hard enough I can keep some piece of it forever." "You don't have to memorize it," Adrian said. "I'll remember it for both of us, if you need me to. That's what I'm good at. Facts, data, things that stay exactly where I put them." She turned in his arms to look at him, her face pale and lovely in the starlight. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever offered to be for me," she said. "A memory that doesn't fade." "I mean it," Adrian said, and found, to his own surprise, that his voice had gone thick. "Whatever happens, however much time we get, I will remember every single night of it, in more detail than you'll probably find necessary. I already remember exactly what you were wearing the night I met you. I remember the temperature. I remember you said the rope changes where they let you stand, not the sky. You memorized that?" "I've memorized nearly everything you've ever said to me," he admitted. "I didn't decide to. It just happened. Apparently, that's what falling in love does to an astrophysicist, turns him into an archive." Maya laughed, wet-eyed, and pressed her face into his shoulder, and above them, a meteor, early, off-season, unexpected, a stray fragment from some comet's tail neither of them could name, streaked silently across the whole visible width of the sky and vanished. "Make a wish," Adrian murmured into her hair. "I already have everything I'd wish for," Maya said. "I'm just trying to keep it a little longer." They stayed on that ridge until nearly dawn, and when the amateur astronomers found them there in the pale early light, wrapped together in one blanket, fast asleep against a rock still radiating the last of the night's cold, Rosa took a single photograph before waking them, and later, without either of them knowing, had it printed and framed, and gave it to Maya on the morning they left, wrapped in brown paper with a note that read only, "For item 1, may there be many more." Maya kept that photograph for the rest of her life. Chapter 9, Lavender and Light. Item 4 on the list, in Adrian's careful block handwriting this time, reads simply, "Provence. The photograph you sent me that made me finally say something honest." They arrived in late June, when the lavender fields around the old stone village of Valençol had reached their full purple bloom, rows of it stretching in perfect lines toward a horizon that blurred, at dusk, into a violet sky nearly the same color as the flowers themselves. They rented a small stone cottage from a woman named Colette, 83 years old, who had lived in the same house her entire life, and who informed them, on their first evening, in efficient and only occasionally translated English, that she had buried her husband in the small cemetery down the road 41 years ago, and had never once considered leaving. "People ask why I stay," Colette said, setting a bottle of wine from her own small vineyard on the table between them. "I tell them, 40 years I loved him here. Why would I go somewhere he never was?" Maya, who had spent much of her adult life defining a good life by movement, sat with that for a long moment. "Does it get easier?" she asked. "Missing someone in a place, I mean. Does it get easier, Or does it just get familiar? Colette considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. Both, she said finally. It is easier because I know exactly where the missing lives. It is in the garden. It is at the table on Sunday. It does not surprise me anymore. But familiar is not the same as gone. Cherry, never mistake the two. That night, walking between the lavender rows in the last purple light, Maya was quieter than usual, and Adrian, who had learned in the months since the diagnosis to read her silences the way he'd once read data, waited without pressing until she was ready. I used to think staying still was the scary thing, she said eventually. That's why I ran. Every time I felt myself getting attached to a person or a place, I left before it could really get its hooks in. It felt safer. If nothing ever had time to matter that much, nothing could ever hurt that much when it ended. She reached out and let her fingers trail along the lavender stalks as they walked. And now here I am, dying in slow motion, finally understanding that the only thing I actually regret is all the years I spent making sure nothing could matter enough to break my heart. You're not, Adrian started, and stopped himself, because the automatic denial rose in him out of fear, not honesty, and he had promised her, on the napkin, on the plane to Chile, at every stop since, that he would try to meet this with her honestly instead of managing it. I am though, Maya said gently. We don't have to pretend around each other. That's the whole point of the list, isn't it? No pretending, just living, out loud, with the truth in the room. She turned to face him among the rows, the whole field around them fading now into deep violet dusk, one early star, already visible above the tree line. I'm dying, Adrian, slowly. On a schedule neither of us gets to see in advance. And somehow, the closer I get to the end of it, the more I understand that Colette is right. The staying was never the scary part. The scary part was always going to be the leaving. And I already left too many places, too many people, trying to outrun exactly this feeling. I'm done running now. I don't want to spend whatever time I have left anywhere but exactly where you are. Adrian took her face in both hands, the last light catching the gold in her eyes, and kissed her slowly, deliberately, the way he had never quite let himself kiss anyone before, without calculation, without holding part of himself in reserve against some future loss. Then stay, he said against her mouth. Stay with me, not because you have to, because I would rather have however many sunsets we get with you fully here, than 100 years with anyone who's already halfway out the door. Maya laughed, tearful, disbelieving, delighted. Was that a proposal, just Adrian? I don't know, he admitted, laughing too, something in his chest loosening for the first time in weeks. Ask me again in a field with better lighting, and I might actually mean it on purpose. I'm holding you to that, Maya said, and kissed him again, and somewhere down the row, Colette, watching from her kitchen window with the particular satisfaction of a woman who had spent 41 years believing in exactly this kind of love, smiled and turned back to her stove. Chapter 10. The Lights That Dance. Item 9 took them to a fishing village on the northern coast of Norway in September, chasing the aurora with the same woman, Ingrid, the Sami grandmother Maya had interviewed a year earlier, who greeted her like family, and Adrian like a curiosity to be thoroughly evaluated before final approval. You are the scientist, Ingrid said, studying him over a cup of strong black coffee in her small kitchen, wood smoke and dried fish scenting the air. You will tell me the lights are gas, oxygen and nitrogen, solar wind. I would, Adrian admitted, if you asked me for the scientific explanation. I am not asking you for that. Ingrid's eyes crinkled. I am asking whether you believe, scientist, that the lights only mean what your books say they mean. Adrian glanced at Maya, who was watching this exchange with poorly concealed delight, offering him no help whatsoever. I think, he said slowly, that the scientific explanation and the meaning aren't actually in competition. The lights are solar particles interacting with the atmosphere. They're also, to you, the souls of your ancestors dancing. Both of those things can be true at the same time. One explains how, the other explains why it matters. Ingrid studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, decisively, the verdict apparently rendered. He will do, she told Maya, as though Adrian weren't sitting 3 feet away. Good, now eat. The sky will not perform on an empty stomach. The lights came that night, faint at first, a pale green smear low on the northern horizon that Adrian, out of old habit, nearly explained away as atmospheric haze, before building, over the course of an hour, into curtains of green and violet that rippled and folded across the entire sky, like something alive, something breathing, utterly indifferent to any explanation either science or folklore could offer. Maya filmed for the first 20 minutes, and then, without announcement, set the camera down on its tripod and simply stood beside Adrian in the snow, her mittened hand finding his, both of them silent beneath a sky, doing something neither language nor equation could fully hold. "I want to tell you something," Maya said eventually, her breath fogging in the cold, "and I need you not to try to fix it. I just need you to hear it. Okay? I'm scared." Her voice was steady, but her hand tightened around his. "Not of dying, exactly. I've made a strange kind of peace with that part. Most days, I'm scared of the in-between, the part where my body starts failing before it finally stops. The part where I might not know your face anymore, or my own name, or what any of this meant. I've watched people go through that. It's not the ending in movies. It's slow, and it's undignified sometimes, and I don't know how to prepare you for that, because I don't know how to prepare myself." Adrian felt the old instinct rise in him, the urge to research, to reassure, to offer a statistic that might soften the fear, and set it down, deliberately, the way she'd taught him to. "I don't need you to prepare me," he said instead. "I need you to let me be there for whatever version of it actually happens, instead of the one we're both imagining right now in the dark, which is probably worse than the truth ever gets to be. I'm not scared of losing pieces of you along the way, Maya. I've loved every version of you I've met so far. The one who trespassed on my lawn, the one who cried in a parking garage, the one standing here right now, telling me the truth instead of protecting me from it. I'll love whatever version comes next too. That's not a promise I'm making, because it sounds brave. It's just true." Maya turned into him, pressing her face against his coat, and above them, the aurora shifted from green to a deep rose violet, rare enough that Ingrid, watching from her doorway, would later say she hadn't seen the color in almost a decade. "Ingrid says you're not supposed to whistle at the lights," Maya said finally, muffled against his chest, "or they'll come down and carry you away." "Good thing I wasn't planning to whistle. I might," Maya said. "I might not mind so much, being carried off by something that beautiful." Adrian held her tighter, said nothing, and understood, watching the sky ripple and fold above the woman who had taught him, finally, how to feel something without needing to measure it first, that some fears could not be solved. They could only be witnessed, together, in the cold, under a light that had traveled 93 million miles, just to remind two very small people standing in the snow that they were not, for this one night at least, out of time yet. Chapter 11. The Edge of the World. Item 12 on the list took them to the western coast of Ireland in late October, to a stretch of black cliffs that dropped nearly 700 feet into an Atlantic so restless it seemed, from a distance, to be breathing. Maya had chosen it not for the sky at all, at first, but for the cliffs themselves, which she had photographed once years earlier during a different film and never quite stopped thinking about, though when Adrian pulled up the astronomical charts for their travel dates, he'd found, with the quiet delight of a man who had learned to treat coincidence as a kind of gift, that a modest meteor shower, the Orionids, would be peaking on their second night there, streaking in over open ocean with nothing between the falling light and the two of them but 700 feet of dark air. They stayed in a converted stone barn, a short walk from the cliff path, kept by a couple named Fiona and Seamus, who ran the last remaining sheep farm in a valley that had once held a dozen. Fiona, sturdy and sharp-tongued, and instantly fond of Maya, in the way certain people always seemed to be within minutes of meeting her, insisted on walking them out to the cliff edge herself the first evening, warning them at length about wind gusts and loose stone, and the particular treachery of black rock in low light, all while walking briskly ahead of them without a torch of her own. "My grandmother used to say the cliffs were where the sky came down to check on the sea," Fiona told them, settling onto a flat outcrop that had clearly served this exact purpose for generations before them. "Now I don't know if I believe that, mind, but I've watched more sunsets from this rock than I've had hot dinners, and I've never once caught the sky doing anything but looking. The wind at the cliff edge was fierce and cold and constant, carrying the smell of salt and wet stone, and Maya, her balance far less certain now than it had been even in Norway 2 months earlier, sat wedged securely between Adrian's legs, his arms wrapped fully around her, both of them bundled against a cold that seemed to come from the ocean itself rather than the sky. I keep thinking about edges, Maya said, watching whitecaps break apart far below them in the last gray light. Cliffs, diagnoses, endings. I used to be terrified of edges. That's half of why I never stayed anywhere long enough to reach one. I'd leave a place, a job, a relationship, right around the moment it started asking something real of me, because staying felt like walking toward exactly this. Straight toward a drop I couldn't see the bottom of. She leaned her head back against his shoulder. I don't feel that anymore. I don't know when it stopped. Somewhere between Chile and here, I think, I stopped being afraid of the edge and started just wanting to see what was actually at the bottom of it, instead of running before I found out. What's at the bottom of it? Adrian asked quietly. I don't know yet, Maya admitted, but I know you're going to be standing right here when I find out. That's different than anything I've ever had before. That's the whole reason the edge doesn't scare me anymore. They watched the Orionids that second night from the exact same outcrop, the meteors streaking in low and fast over the black water, several of them bright enough to throw a brief, flickering light across the cliff face itself. Fiona and Seamus joined them partway through, bringing a thermos of something strong and unnamed, that Seamus called cliff tea. With a wink, Maya decided not to interrogate, and the four of them sat together in comfortable near silence. Strangers turned unexpectedly close in the space of 2 days, watching the sky put on a show for an audience of 4 people and several hundred indifferent sheep. You'll come back, Fiona said, not quite a question, as they said their goodbyes on the 3rd morning, her hand lingering on Maya's for a moment longer than a simple handshake required, her eyes carrying an understanding Maya hadn't voiced aloud to her, but that women like Fiona, Maya was learning, always seemed to sense anyway. Whatever happens, some part of you will come back to this cliff. I can always tell, with the ones who really see it properly, instead of just taking a photograph and moving on. I'll come back, Maya said, and meant it in whatever way a person could mean a promise like that. And Fiona nodded once, satisfied, and did not ask her to explain further. On the drive to the airport, Maya was quiet for a long while, watching the green fields blur past the window, before she finally spoke. I want my ashes somewhere with a view like that, she said, matter of fact, the way she'd learned to say the hard things now, without flinching, without apologizing for saying them. Somewhere with an edge, somewhere the sky comes down to check on something bigger than itself. Adrian, driving, kept his eyes on the road, and his voice, with effort, steady. I'll remember, he said. Wherever you want, I'll take you there myself. I know you will, Maya said, and reached over to rest her hand on his knee, the two of them driving on in a silence that held, for once, no fear in it at all, only the particular, hard-won peace of 2 people who had stopped pretending the edge wasn't there, and had decided, together, to walk toward it anyway, eyes open, unafraid. Chapter 12. What the living owe each other. They flew home to California in October. Home, now, being a word both of them used without hesitation, for the first time in Maya's adult life, to describe a single fixed address, and Maya, sensing correctly that the list had grown too focused on chasing spectacular skies and not focused enough on the smaller, harder work of mending what needed mending, added an item that surprised even her. Item 14. She wrote, call Danny. Actually call him. Don't send a postcard from somewhere he can't reach you. Danny Collins was 26, worked in marine biology off the coast of San Diego, and had not spoken to his sister in any meaningful way for nearly 3 years. Not since Maya had missed their mother's memorial service to film a solar eclipse in Indonesia, a decision she had defended fiercely at the time, and had spent every year since quietly regretting. He arrived at their apartment 2 days after her call, wary, arms crossed, looking so much like their late mother around the eyes that Maya had to look away for a moment before she could speak. You look terrible, Danny said, which was, Adrian would learn the particular language of love this family spoke fluently, and almost no other. "I'm dying, Danny. It comes with the territory." Danny's arms uncrossed. His face did something complicated. "That's not funny." "I know." Maya's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to say it without you hanging up on me. I've been dying for a while now, actually, slowly, and I didn't call you, and I think some small ugly part of me was protecting myself from you saying no if I asked you to come." Danny crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into an embrace so fierce it nearly knocked her off balance. And Adrian, watching from the kitchen doorway, quietly excused himself to give them privacy, though he could still hear, through the thin apartment walls, the muffled sound of 2 people finally saying everything they should have said years earlier. Later, once Danny had calmed enough to sit and eat and hear the full diagnosis without his hands shaking, he turned to Adrian with an intensity that made the astrophysicist, a man rarely intimidated by anything short of a peer review committee, sit up straighter. "Take care of her," Danny said. "It wasn't a request. I intend to," Adrian said, "for as long as she'll let me." Danny studied him for a long moment, then nodded, the same decisive verdict Ingrid had rendered months earlier in a Norwegian kitchen. "Good. She needs someone who won't let her run this time. She's very good at running, I've noticed." "She gets it from our dad," Danny said, softer now. "He left when we were kids. I think some part of her has spent her whole life proving she could leave first, before anyone left her." He glanced toward the hallway, where Maya's laugh drifted from the bathroom, where she was washing her face after crying. "I'm glad she found someone who stayed still enough to catch her." That same week, on Eleanor's insistence, Adrian brought Maya to the observatory for a dinner with the small circle of colleagues who had, over the past year, become something closer to family than staff. Eleanor, 71 and unsentimental by professional reputation, surprised everyone by standing at the end of the meal, raising her glass, and speaking with a raw honesty Adrian had rarely heard from her. "I buried a husband 31 years ago," Eleanor said, her voice steady but her eyes bright. "Everyone told me, afterward, that I'd been robbed of the years we should have had. And I believed them, for a long time. It took me a decade to understand that grief is just love with nowhere left to go, and that the years we did have were not diminished by being fewer than I wanted. They were, if anything, sharper for it, more noticed." She looked at Adrian, then at Maya, with an expression that carried the whole weight of 31 years behind it. "I watched this young man build a career out of avoiding exactly what the 2 of you are doing right now, which is choosing, with your eyes wide open, to love something you know you might lose. I think it is the bravest thing either of you will ever do, to the both of you, and to every sky you have left to see." The table drank in silence, several people quietly wiping their eyes, and Maya reached under the table for Adrian's hand and held it through the rest of the toast, and for the first time since the diagnosis, Adrian felt something he hadn't expected to feel at all, in the middle of grief. Gratitude, whole and uncomplicated, for every single person who had shown up, in their own imperfect way, to help carry what neither he nor Maya could carry entirely alone. Chapter 13. The Festival on the Ridge. Item 16 took them, in late November, to a stargazing festival held every year in a national park in Utah. 3 days of workshops and telescope clinics and midnight talks held beneath some of the darkest protected skies left in the country. A trip Maya had insisted on not for any rare celestial event, but because she wanted, in her words, to be around a whole crowd of ordinary people falling in love with the sky the exact same way I did. They arrived on the first afternoon to find the park's main meadow already filling with families, retirees, amateur astronomers, hauling telescopes twice their own height out of camper vans, and a small cluster of teenagers running a homemade planetarium show out of the back of a converted school bus. Maya, who moved more slowly now and rested more often than she once had, still insisted on walking the length of the meadow herself, refusing the wheelchair the park rangers had quietly offered, leaning instead on Adrian's arm, and stopping every few yards to admire someone's telescope setup, or ask a stranger what had first brought them out into the dark. It was there, on the second evening, that they met Harold and Ruth Whitaker, both in their late 80s, seated together in matching folding chairs at the edge of the meadow, with a single shared blanket over their knees and a telescope between them that Harold had built himself, by hand, in 1974. 62 years married, Ruth told Maya proudly, when Maya knelt, carefully, with Adrian's steadying hand at her elbow, to admire the telescope's brass fittings. We came to this same festival on our honeymoon, when it was barely more than a few families with lawn chairs. We've been back every single year since, except the 2 years Harold had his hip done. 62 years, Maya repeated, something in her voice catching. How do you know, after that long, that it's still worth coming back for? Harold, who had said almost nothing until that point, considered the question with the unhurried patience of a man who had learned, decades earlier, that the best answers were rarely the fast ones. You don't come back because it's the same sky every year, he said finally. You come back because you're not the same person every year, and neither is she, and it's a fine thing, watching someone change beside you for 62 years and still wanting to sit under the stars with them at the end of it. He reached over, without looking, and found his wife's hand exactly where it always was. That's the whole secret, if you want it. Not staying the same, staying together while you both keep changing. Maya was quiet for a long while after they said their goodbyes, walking slowly back toward their own tent with Adrian's arm around her waist, the meadow around them filling now with the soft murmured wonder of 100 strangers, finding the same constellations for the first time or the 1,000th. I used to think a love story needed decades to be worth telling, she said finally. 62 years, like the Whitakers, I think I've spent this whole illness quietly grieving that I'll never get to be them. Old, still holding hands, still coming back to the same meadow every November. She stopped walking, turning to look up at him, her face pale in the dark, but her eyes, as always, unmistakably alive. But I don't think that's actually the secret they were describing, is it? It was never really about the 62 years. It was about staying, on purpose, every single one of the years you do get, however many that turns out to be. I think you're right, Adrian said quietly. We're not going to get 62 years, Adrian. She said it plainly, without flinching, the way she'd learned to say all the hard true things since the diagnosis. But I don't think that means we didn't get the secret. I think we got it early. We just have to hold on to it harder, because we have less time to practice. That night, a group of children from a nearby scout troop gathered around one of the festival's largest telescopes, waiting their turn to see Saturn's rings for the first time, and Maya, unable to stand in line for long herself, asked the ranger running the telescope if she might simply sit nearby and listen to their reactions instead. She spent nearly an hour there, wrapped in blankets in a borrowed camp chair, laughing softly every time a child gasped at the sight of the rings, occasionally leaning over to ask one of them, gently, what they thought Saturn might sound like, or smell like, or whether they thought anyone was looking back. That's my favorite sound in the whole world, she told Adrian later, as he tucked the blankets more securely around her for the walk back to their tent. Kids seeing something for the first time, it sounds like hope. I wanted one more night of hearing it. Adrian held her a little tighter than usual that night, watching the Utah sky wheel slowly overhead, dense with stars in a way that made the whole meadow glow faintly silver, and thought of Harold and Ruth Whitaker, 62 years and still holding hands, and of the 6 words on a napkin that had somehow, against every fear either of them had carried into that diner kitchen, become the truest promise either of them had ever kept. Chapter 14. The cabin winter brought them to a small forest cabin in the Sierra Nevada, item 17 on the list, chosen not for any spectacular celestial event, but because Maya had written, simply, somewhere quiet, just us, no filming, no donors, no bucket list pressure. I just want to be still with you for a week. It was the first extended stretch of true stillness either of them had allowed themselves since the diagnosis, and it revealed, almost immediately, how much they had both been using motion, new skies, new countries, new lists of things to accomplish, as a way of outrunning the quieter, harder conversations still waiting underneath. The tremors had grown more frequent by then, and one morning, 3 days into the cabin stay, Maya dropped a mug of coffee, and this time did not laugh it off. She sat on the cabin floor amid the broken ceramic and simply cried, not delicately, not performing strength for anyone's benefit, and Adrian knelt beside her and held her while she shook, and did not try to clean up the mess until she was ready to let him. "I hate this part," she said finally, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I hate that my body is starting to feel like something happening to me, instead of something that is me. I used to trust it completely. I climbed mountains with this body. I slept on strangers' fishing boats with this body. Now it drops mugs and blurs my vision, and I don't know which parts of tomorrow I still get to count on." "You don't have to know," Adrian said. "None of us actually get to know that, Maya. You're just the only one of us who's been handed proof of it early. That's a very astrophysicist way of trying to make me feel better. Is it working?" She let out a wet, surprised laugh. "A little." They spent the rest of the week doing almost nothing, by design, reading in front of the fire, cooking slow meals from a cookbook Maya had never opened before, taking short walks through snow-heavy pines when her legs allowed it, and resting without apology when they didn't. Adrian, who had spent his whole life believing that meaningful time had to be filled with achievement, discovered, watching Maya doze against his shoulder, on the cabin's small couch on their fifth afternoon there, a book open and forgotten in her lap, that some of the fullest hours of his life so far had contained, by any objective measure, almost nothing at all. On their last night at the cabin, with no meteor shower and no aurora and nothing scheduled, they lay together on a blanket in the small clearing behind the cabin, bundled against the cold, watching an entirely ordinary sky. No named event, no rare alignment, just the familiar winter constellations Adrian had known since childhood. "Tell me a story about one of them," Maya said, gesturing loosely upward, her energy low but her eyes still bright. "Not the science, the story behind it, the myth." Adrian found Orion first, easy in the winter sky, and told her the old Greek story. The hunter, blinded, guided by a boy on his shoulders toward the sunrise that would restore his sight, walking east every morning in patient, faithful hope. "He walked toward the light every day," Maya murmured, not knowing for certain it would actually heal him. "He just kept walking anyway." "That's the story, yes. I like that better than any of your facts, just Adrian." She found his hand under the blanket and laced her fingers through his, weaker now than they'd been in Provence, but present, certain, entirely hers. "Maybe that's what we're doing too, walking toward the light, not because we know for sure it fixes anything, just because it's better than standing still in the dark." Adrian pressed a kiss to the top of her head, and above them Orion wheeled slowly westward with the turning night, patient and blind and hopeful, exactly as he had been for 3,000 years of human stories, and Adrian thought, not for the first time, that his father had been right all along. Some things could only be understood by two people, lying very still, looking up together. Chapter 15. Ruins and Sunrise. Spring took them to the ancient hillside ruins, above a small village in Greece. Item 20 on the list. Ruins Maya had wanted to see since she was a girl, chosen for the way they framed the eastern horizon in broken marble columns, perfect for watching the sunrise from among stones that had stood witness to nearly 3,000 years of other people's mornings. Maya's mobility had declined enough by then that the climb up the hillside path took nearly an hour, twice what it should have, Adrian's arm around her waist for most of it, both of them stopping often, neither of them minding the pace nearly as much as either would have predicted a year earlier. "I used to run up hills like this," Maya said, breathless, laughing at herself, for fun, just to see if I could beat my own time. "You're beating a different kind of time now," Adrian said. "I think that one matters more." They reached the ruins an hour before dawn and settled onto a fallen column still warm from the previous day's sun, wrapped in the same blanket that had traveled with them to 3 continents by now, worn soft at the edges from use. The local guide who had walked them up, a young man named Petros, whose family had lived in the village for 6 generations, pointed out, before leaving them to their privacy, the exact spot where, according to legend, an ancient astronomer had once tracked the rising of a particular star to mark the turning of the seasons for his entire village. "They did not have your instruments," Petros said to Adrian, with obvious pride in his voice. "Only their eyes, and their patience, and their trust that the sky would keep its promises." And it did, every year, exactly on time. When Petros had gone, Maya turned to Adrian in the gray pre-dawn light, her face pale and thin now in a way that still, somehow, took his breath away exactly as it had the first night he'd seen her in the grass at Whitfield. "I have something to ask you," she said, "and I need you to actually let me ask it, instead of guessing and answering before I finish, which you do constantly, by the way, and which I have never once told you because I secretly find it charming. Ask me." Maya reached into her jacket pocket with hands that shook only slightly and produced a small ring. Not expensive, not elaborate. A thin band of silver, set with a single small stone, the pale gold color of her own eyes, which she had, Adrian would later learn, bought quietly in Marrakesh months earlier, and carried with her every single day since, waiting for the right sky. "I know this isn't how it's supposed to go," she said, her voice unsteady but her eyes clear. "I know you're the one who's supposed to get down on one knee with some rehearsed speech about forever, and maybe somewhere in a version of this life where I got to keep my whole future. That's exactly how it would have happened. But I don't get that version, Adrian, and I've stopped grieving the versions I don't get, because it wastes time I don't have to waste." She held the ring up between them, the first pale light of dawn just beginning to touch the ruins around them. "I don't want to marry you because I'm scared of running out of time. I want to marry you because in every single life I could have lived, in every sky I've ever stood under, you are the only home I have ever actually wanted to stay in. However long we get, I want all of it to be as your wife, not just your girlfriend keeping a bucket list. Will you marry me, just Adrian?" Adrian, who had once built an entire identity around never being caught by surprise, found himself entirely, wordlessly undone. He took her shaking hands in his, steadied them, and let the ring slide, finally, onto her finger. "Yes," he said, his own voice breaking apart on the single syllable. "Yes, 1,000 times, in every sky, in every ruin, in every ordinary kitchen for however many mornings we get. Yes." The sun broke over the eastern hills exactly as Petros's ancestors had trusted it would. Exactly on time, gold light pouring across 3,000 years of broken marble and finding. At the center of all that patient old stone, two people holding each other, and crying and laughing all at once. And above them, fading now in the brightening sky, the last few stars of the night held on a few seconds longer than they should have. As if they too understood, there was something worth staying for. Chapter 16. The Turning. They married in June, in the small garden behind the Whitfield Observatory cottage, under an ordinary blue afternoon sky that Maya insisted on, despite Adrian's gentle suggestion that they wait for evening. "I've spent this whole relationship falling in love with you under the stars," she told him, adjusting the small crown of dried lavender Colette had mailed from Provence for exactly this purpose. "I want to marry you in daylight. I want to see your whole face when you say it, not just the parts the dark lets me see." Danny walked her down the garden path, his arm firm under her unsteady hand. Eleanor cried openly through the entire ceremony. Rosa had flown in from Chile with 3 other members of the Atacama Astronomers Club, and Ingrid sent a small carved reindeer bone pendant from Norway that Maya wore pinned inside her dress, close to her heart, the whole day. It was, by any measure, one of the happiest days of both their lives, and neither of them pretended, even for a moment, that it existed outside the shadow, steadily lengthening across it. The disease progressed faster after the wedding than either of them had allowed themselves to expect. By late summer, Maya's tremors had grown severe enough that she could no longer safely hold a camera, a loss she mourned with a fierceness that frightened even her, grieving not just the physical capability, but the identity she'd built her entire adult life around. By early autumn, the vision episodes had become near daily, sometimes lasting hours, and her balance had deteriorated enough that stairs, once nothing, became a small daily negotiation. She finished the documentary anyway. It took the last of her strength, working from a wheelchair in the observatory's small editing suite with a young filmmaker named Priya she'd mentored 2 years earlier, now doing the technical work Maya could no longer manage alone, describing shots and cuts and rhythms from memory, with a precision that left Priya, more than once, in tears at the sheer force of Maya's will. Skywatchers premiered that October at a small festival in Los Angeles, dedicated, in its final title card, To everyone who has ever looked up and found a reason to stay a little longer. Maya attended in the wheelchair she'd finally, reluctantly, accepted, wearing a dress the deep violet of a Provence sunset, and received, at the film's end, a standing ovation that lasted nearly 4 minutes, during which Adrian knelt beside her chair and held her hand and did not, for once in his adult life, try to hold back his own tears in public. "You did it," he said, when the applause finally quieted enough to speak. "You finished it." "We finished it," Maya corrected, her voice thin now, but still, unmistakably, hers. "Every sky on that list, every single one made it into the film, in one way or another. You're in almost every frame, Adrian, even the ones where the camera never turns toward you. I filmed you the whole time. I just didn't tell you." That November, a fall in the bathroom sent her to the hospital for the first time since the diagnosis, and the doctors, gentle but direct, told them both what they had each already privately understood for weeks. The progression had entered its final phase. Months, not years. Possibly fewer. Adrian did not retreat into research this time. He had learned, over 18 months, exactly what Maya had once needed him to learn, and instead of 43 browser tabs, he simply sat beside her hospital bed, held her hand, and asked her, quietly, what she wanted the remaining time to look like. "One more sky," Maya said, her voice weaker than it had ever been, but her eyes, still, unmistakably bright. "The big one, the one we've been saving. Item 22, the last entry on the original napkin list, added by Adrian himself in Provence, in careful block letters beneath everything Maya had written before it. A total eclipse, together, wherever in the world it happens to fall." There was, as it happened, one due to cross a remote stretch of the Faroe Islands in 11 weeks, the same islands where Maya had once talked her way onto a fishing boat with nothing but a smile. The place, she'd always said, where the very first spark of the documentary had been lit. "Can you make the trip?" Adrian asked the attending physician, quietly, in the hallway, bracing for the answer he feared. The doctor considered it for a long moment. "It won't be easy," she said finally. "We'll need to arrange transport, medical support, contingencies. But if this is what she wants, if this is what matters to her, then my job is to help you get her there safely, not to talk either of you out of it." She met his eyes. "I've been doing this a long time, Dr. Brooks. I've learned that the patients who spend their last months doing the thing that matters most to them tend to carry themselves through it with a peace the ones who don't never quite find. Take her to see her eclipse." Chapter 17. Everything We Have Left. They arrived in the Faroe Islands in late January, 11 weeks after the hospital, in a small fishing village on the northern coast where the same fisherman Maya had once helped gut a catch for. A weathered, taciturn man named Olaf, now in his 70s, met them at the dock with a wheelchair-accessible cottage already arranged, blankets already warming by the fire, and an expression of such open grief and love that Adrian understood, without needing to be told, exactly how many lives Maya Collins had quietly, permanently changed over the years, in places she'd visited for a season and never returned to, and yet never really left. "She talked her way onto my boat," Olaf told Adrian, the two of them standing on the dock while Maya rested inside, with nothing but a smile. 10 years ago, I told my wife that night, this one, she will do something enormous with her life. I did not know it would be this enormous. But I knew it would matter. The days leading up to the eclipse were slower than any they'd shared before, Maya sleeping more now than waking, her strength rationed carefully for the moments that mattered most, her speech sometimes slurred, her hands mostly still. But her mind, remarkably, stayed clear and sharp and entirely hers, and she spent the mornings she felt strongest dictating letters to Priya, to finish the film's distribution, to Danny with instructions Adrian suspected were really just an excuse to tell her brother she loved him one more time in writing, to Eleanor, with a request Adrian would not learn the contents of until much later. On the third night, unable to sleep, Adrian found her awake beside him, staring at the low ceiling in the dark. "Are you afraid?" he asked quietly, the question he had never quite let himself ask directly before. "Less than I thought I'd be." Her voice was slow now, careful with each word, but steady. "I used to think dying would feel like running out of time, like a countdown ending at 0. She turned her head against the pillow to look at him. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like, I don't know, like closing a very long, very good book. I know how it ends. I helped write the ending. I'm not scared of the last page, Adrian. I'm just sad there won't be a sequel with you in it. There might be, Adrian said, his voice rough. I don't know what I believe about any of that. I've spent my whole life trusting only what I could measure, but I know that light from stars that died thousands of years ago is still reaching us right now. I know that nothing that burns that bright just disappears without a trace. Maybe that's not science. Maybe that's just what loving you has taught me to believe instead. Maya smiled, slow and full, the same smile from the observatory lawn, unchanged beneath everything the disease had taken. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said, just Adrian. Say it slow next time. It works better. I love you, he said, slowly, deliberately, each word its own complete sentence. I love you. I love you too, Maya whispered. Every version of you. The one who wouldn't let me trespass. The one who researched Patagonian bus schedules. The one who cried in a parking garage and never let go of my hand after. I got the whole catalog, Adrian. I got the very best years anyone's ever had, even if I didn't get very many of them. She fell asleep in his arms not long after, and Adrian lay awake until dawn, watching her breathe, memorizing, as he had promised her in the Atacama Desert 18 months earlier, every detail of a night he already understood, with the same certainty he brought to a confirmed hypothesis he would spend the rest of his life returning to. Chapter 18. Before the Stars Burn Out. The morning of the eclipse dawned clear and cold, the Faroese sky scrubbed of cloud by an overnight wind, the kind of perfect visibility Adrian had chased professionally for 15 years and never once wanted as badly as he wanted it now. Olaf and 2 other villagers helped carry Maya's wheelchair down to the same rocky headland where, 10 years earlier, she had once filmed her very first sky story. A wide, open shelf of stone facing west over the gray winter sea, chosen because Maya, in one of her last clear conversations, had insisted it be somewhere she'd already loved before she ever knew Adrian existed, so that the ending, in her words, connects all the way back to the beginning, like it's supposed to. They gathered a small circle, Danny, who had flown in 3 days earlier and hadn't left her side since, Priya, camera in hand, filming not for any documentary now, but simply because Maya had asked her to, gently, so that someday there would be something left to watch. Olaf and his wife, Eleanor, 72 now, who had crossed an ocean without a second thought the moment Adrian called, and Adrian himself, kneeling beside the wheelchair, Maya's hand, thin and cool now, held firmly in both of his. The eclipse began exactly on schedule, exactly as 3,000 years of patient human astronomers had always trusted it would, the moon's dark edge beginning its slow crawl across the face of the sun. Tell me what's happening, Maya murmured, her eyes closed now more often than open, her strength nearly spent. Narrate it for me. Like the brochure, Adrian laughed, wet and broken and full of love, and did exactly that, describing in his low, careful, scientist's voice the exact moment first contact occurred, the way the light would begin to change, thin and strange, the temperature dropping perceptibly around them as the sun's disk grew steadily darker. The birds have gone quiet, he told her, as they had, the whole headland falling into an eerie hush. The lights turning silver, we're maybe 4 minutes from totality. Silver, Maya repeated softly. I love silver light. I know, Adrian said. You told me that in San Francisco, the fog, you said, made everything look like it was underwater. You've told me nearly everything you love, Maya. I remember all of it. The last sliver of sun vanished behind the moon's dark edge, and for 2 full minutes, the sky above the Faroe Islands went dark enough for stars to appear at midday. A small scattering of the brightest ones, visible around the black disk of the eclipsed sun, its corona blazing out in fine silver-white streamers against a sky the deep, impossible blue of very early dusk. Maya opened her eyes, one final time, fully, and looked up. Oh, she whispered, and the single syllable carried in it every ounce of wonder she had chased across 11 countries, and 4 continents, and one entire remarkable life spent looking up. Adrian, look at that, I see it, Adrian said, his voice breaking completely now, tears freezing on his cheeks in the sudden midday cold. I see it, Maya. I'm looking right at it. She turned her head, slowly, and looked at him instead of the sky, her eyes finding his with a clarity that felt, in that moment, like every gift she had ever given him distilled into one final look. The woman on the grass at Whitfield. The woman who had taught him to feel things without needing to measure them first. The woman who had turned his careful, catalogued life into something finally, fully alive. "Thank you," she said, "for coming to find me on that lawn." "Thank you," Adrian said, "for never once believing in the rope." She smiled, the whole, unguarded, too loud laugh smile he had fallen in love with on the very first night, and closed her eyes again, resting her head against his shoulder, her hand still held firm in both of his, as the corona blazed silently above them, and the small gathered circle of everyone who loved her stood together in the sudden cold and dark, holding vigil beneath a sky, doing the one thing it had always, faithfully, reliably done, burning, brilliant and brief, exactly long enough to be unforgettable. Maya Collins died 2 days later, in her sleep, at the small cottage on the headland, with Adrian's hand in hers and the sound of the sea outside the window, having lived, by any honest measure, an entire lifetime of wonder inside 18 borrowed months, and having taught, in the process, the one man in the world who had spent his whole life explaining the sky, that some things were never meant to be explained at all, only witnessed, only loved, for exactly as long as they were given, and treasured for every second after. The end. You have just listened to Before the Stars Burn Out, a powerful and tender story of love, loss, courage, wonder, and the beauty of choosing to live fully, even when time is uncertain. Adrian and Maya's journey reminds us that life does not become meaningful because it lasts forever. It becomes meaningful because we notice it, because we love deeply, because we stand beneath the sky with someone who makes the darkness feel less empty. Through meteor showers, letters across continents, painful diagnosis, desert skies, lavender fields, northern lights, ocean cliffs, family healing, and the quiet promise to keep looking up, they discover that love is not defeated by time. Love becomes the light that remains. Thank you for spending this time with Adrian and Maya. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more emotional romance stories, unforgettable love stories, and full audiobook readings.